talking to Chris Baldwin from 10timesdigital.nl. We've become very transactional in the digital world, and you want to make more meaningful relationships with people. Tell us about it.
So yeah, the deeper we go into this digital era, using technology and data, the more it becomes easy to actually just facilitate transactions. But that's actually not what people are looking for. When you think about from a consumer perspective, from a user perspective, they're looking for a relationship with a brand that's going to service their needs, their wants, that's going to really build trust and pull them in to a relationship.
So the transactions are really relationships for the customers, but how do we e-commerce professionals go about enhancing that?
So you see, what I like to say is that technology solves for scarcity, creates abundance. And right now we're in the mindset of creating abundant transactions. But you don't do that through focusing on transactions. You do that through focusing on a healthy relationship. And then within the context of that relationship, really understanding what does the other person need? What do they want? What are their problems? What are the experiences I need to build to earn their attention? And then within that context, figuring out how to sell them stuff, figuring out how to generate transactions. And so through a healthy relationship, you can create abundant transactions.
Do you have a company that does that well, an example? Or?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, companies like Google and Apple and Amazon have been very successful at doing this. I mean, think of Google, for example. What's more personalized than Google? And Amazon, what's more personalized than Amazon? I mean, Amazon sometimes knows you better than your partner. You know, when you behave long enough on Amazon, they're a recommendation engine, they're a discovery engine. You know, those 50 million books out there, how do I know which one's right for me? Well, based on my behavior and what I like and how I interact through technology with Amazon, they're collecting the data and they're understanding really what's driving my behavior, what's driving my actions, what makes me feel, what gets me emotional. And they can understand that through technology and data and start to service these needs and wants, build a relationship whereby through there, I'm going to then seek out transactions in everything that's Amazon.
So I think if I listen to you, the key is data and personalization.
So I built a model called Meaningful Connections, which starts off, the first step is personalization. It's understanding the needs and wants of the individual you're dealing with, building trust by acting in their best interest. That's only the first step. That's fine if you want to facilitate transactions, but it's not enough if you want to build a relationship. The next step is experiences, really building an experience that earns people's attention, because unless you have their attention, you can't tell them a story, you can't influence them. The next step is really about empowering them by solving their problems. The next step is really about driving value by managing their expectations, which ultimately leads to customer happiness, which is the Meaningful Connections model I built a couple of years ago.
I think it's very difficult to find those meaningful things and values.
Well, yeah, we're entering into a digital age that's hyper-connecting us. And at the end of the day, when people get hyper-connected, what they're going to seek is the meaningful connections that really add value to their lives. And so we're going to make a choice. We're going to make a choice about, you know, what brands do I want to service my needs? What people do I want relationships with? Because we've entered into a social era with chat and messenger where we can build thousands of relationships. But every one of these relationships is taking our time and our attention. And so we're going to be selective in the relationships we want to engage in, the meaningful relationships. And that's what I call meaningful connections.
And being selective means you have to really define your target audience?
As a company, it's not so much about defining your target audience, it's about really understanding what does your audience need and want from you. Because if you start to segment down too much on, okay, what do I have to offer, then that can be sometimes very good in focus, but it can also limit your possibilities that you have. The better way is to really understand, so what is the demand coming to me and how can I cater for that demand through supply? How can I really solve people's problems? Not just build products, but solve problems. And then really understanding, so me as a brand, and my organization as a brand, what are people expecting from me? And how can I service those? And that is how you grow and expand, cross and upsell, whatever you want to call it. Really understanding that you're here on this planet for a reason, to help people live better lives. You know, make people happier, customer happiness, make people happy, they'll come back for more. That's one thing I always say, but also help people be wealthier, be more productive, be more prosperous, and really understanding, so what role does my brand play in people's lives? Not just the direct segment I'm addressing, but maybe there are other segments that also need me as a brand.
Interesting. Any last piece of advice for an e-commerce professional?
Well, there's lots of pieces, but if I was going to tell you one, it's the way I finish many of my keynotes, and it's just a mindset. I use this quote. It's called, "Be so good they can't ignore you." And it's a quote I use not in an arrogant way, but it's really about getting the best version of you. You know, as an organization, towards your employees, towards your customers, towards your partners and shareholders, be so good they can't ignore you. But also as teams within organizations, now we all know how hard it can be, you know, as you get into a big organizations to get stuff done, get your ideas out there and get momentum to those ideas. Well, be so good they can't ignore you. And as individuals, I always finish with this, it comes right down to the individual because that's where it starts. You know, as an individual, you know, this is where it's really confronting as an individual. But I use this specific quote for me to get the best version out of myself. And that's about getting people's attention. It's about storytelling. It's about making them emotional, creating that emotional connection, emotional bond, having them remember you, because unless you create emotion, they're not going to remember you, because emotions are what makes memory stick. And then having something so interesting for them that they're going to come back and seek you out a second time. And I think that applies for brands, it applies for teams, and it applies for individuals.
Thank you very much.